Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this, our 19th annual Green Week of Environmental Events. We're delighted to welcome Provost Prendergast and Chancellor McAleese here to help us launch Green Week, as well as our Students' Union Environmental Officer, Anya Hennessy, and the Dean of Students and Sustainability Champion for Trinity, Catherine McCabe. My name is Michelle Hallahan, and I'm the Sustainability Advisor for Trinity. So I would like to personally offer on behalf of the Green Campus Committee our very best wishes to Senator David Norris, who unfortunately can't be here with us today. Senator Norris has been a dedicated, passionate and essential part of every annual Green Week launch since its inception 19 years ago. So Senator Norris, we send you our heartfelt gratitude for your years of support, and we look forward to joining with us again in our 20th event next year. So I'm sure everybody here is tired of hearing how tough this past year has been for everybody. We're all very familiar with how it has been. But I'd like to focus instead today on some of the positives, as there were many benefits to the slowdown of our inexorable rush to consume this planet in 2020. The destructive capitalist economy that we have is killing our planet. It encourages and even forces us to constantly be in a state of buying and consuming. And this is killing off a little piece of nature every time we make another purchase. So one of the very few benefits to this pandemic was that Ireland's greenhouse gas emissions, and these are the gases which cause climate change, they dropped by 6% in 2020. This gave our planet a tiny bit of breathing space for the first time in decades. In addition, humans across the globe rediscovered nature and reestablished a heartfelt relationship with nature, some for the first time in their lives. This is very welcome and very necessary. We've all discovered what an essential role nature plays in our existence on this planet. Without the constant background drone of traffic last March and April, songbirds were heard throughout Dublin city and across the country, calling out to each other and brightening our mornings. And this was just one of the benefits that we had from the slowdown in our busy, busy lives. The 6% reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions, or carbon footprint as it is known, is only the beginning of what is needed from us humans, however. You must remember that we are the only species on the planet that pollutes our own ecosystem, so the carbon footprint is entirely our responsibility. The science built into the Paris Agreement tells us that we must reduce our carbon footprint by an additional 7% each year for the next 10 years. This is a task that Trinity must take on as much as any other institution in Ireland and across the planet. I'm delighted that Trinity has just taken its first step in creating our climate action plan, and we expect to publish this later this year, so please stay tuned for that. I also want to mention a few of the milestones that Trinity has achieved in the past 12 months, which are not insubstantial. In March of last year, over 12,000 people voted to convert College Green from a plain lawn to a multi-species native wildflower garden, thereby creating precious city centre habitat for our pollinators. This was groundbreaking. College Green faces out into the very heart of Dublin city, and this is a bold statement and something that gives other city dwellers and users permission to do the same. We could all do with a little more nature in our concrete jungles. Secondly, we scripted, launched and implemented the first sustainable procurement policy and accompanying guidelines in October of last year. This is now available on our Green Pages website and on the procurement website for Trinity. This policy and guidelines are designed to educate staff at Trinity to make better choices when buying. And these documents were the culmination of over a year of work by a cross-disciplinary team at Trinity and has already begun to shape our purchases for the better. Thirdly, Trinity is participating in a pan-European sustainability project with 4 other European universities called Uni-Eco. And this project is currently creating 5 sustainability training modules, which will be made available to staff and students later this year. And we look forward to your participation and feedback on these short modules. In addition to this, the Uni-Eco Consortium will be launching a Green Challenges programme, which will invite innovators and entrepreneurs to kickstart projects to raise ecological and climate awareness at Trinity and its partner universities, as well as embed more efficient behaviours throughout our campuses. So we look forward to you joining us on that journey later this summer. Last week, Trinity launched its first Green Labs guide to all staff members in the science faculties. And this document, which was spearheaded by two postgraduate students, Camilla Rosselli and Marta Gulman, enables the 314 labs at Trinity to begin reducing their intense load on our environment. Labs use as much as 10 times more electricity and energy than a similarly sized office, and they use about 20 times or more the amount of water. So not only will this guide enable us to reduce costs, it will also result in a reduced burden on nature. The guide was also shared with the public sector Green Labs group, and that means that labs all across Ireland can use the guide, or they can create their own from that. Tomorrow, you will all be invited to participate in a vote online to choose between 6 labs at Trinity to be funded to join the My Green Labs programme, of which Trinity is an institutional member. So please look out for that voting link on all our social media outlets tomorrow and cast your vote before Friday. There's much to look forward to and plenty of ways to get involved in Trinity's journey to a more sustainable campus, of course. You can join our active Green Campus Committee, which is open to staff and students. And please keep an eye on our sustainability pages, which are linked on the homepage of Trinity's website. Before I hand over to our eminent Students' Union Environmental Officer, I'd like to thank a few people for their support of Trinity's sustainability journey in this past year. David Hackett, our Environmental Services Manager, Kieran McGovern, our Engineering Services Manager and our Energy Guru, Catherine McCabe, our Dean of Students and Sustainability Champion, Paula Murphy, Zoology Professor and Uni Eco Programme Leader, Isolde Sheehy, our Sustainability Apprentice, Ben Hartnett, our Sustainable Procurement Champion, Sarah Jane Cullinan and Nora Campbell, who've taken great strides in raising sustainability within academic and administrative circles. And finally, to Katie Byrne in our Communications Office, without whom none of our work would be known. I also want to recognise some of the groundbreaking and game-changing student leaders who have been essential to this journey and who have devoted their time, energy and passion to the cause of climate awareness over the past year. Katie Smirnova, Becca Paling, Samantha Foley, Aoife Robertson, Amy Heatley, Aidan Desjardins, Winifred Duncan, Owen Hand, Jamie Ruhu, Julie Smirnova, and the 94 students who are participating in our Green Campus subcommittees and Resident Sustainability Champions programme. And these are open for you to join as well. I'd now like to introduce one of our brightest students, someone who's provided great leadership and motivation to our student body for the past 9 months as the Students' Union Environmental Officer. Please welcome Anya Hennessy.
Thank you, Michelle. This year, our Green Week theme, 2030, Time for a Game Change, was chosen to recognise that the next 10 years are crucial in the effort to tackle the climate emergency. The United Nations have declared the coming 10 years as the decade of climate action. They have warned that we have just under 9 years left to make changes so that we can avert irreversible climate change. We have chosen this theme, 2030, Time for a Game Change, to recognise that we have to radically change how we live on this planet in the coming decade and to inspire Trinity students to become leaders in this change. 2030 is also the deadline by which the member states of the United Nations have agreed to achieve the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, which aim to embed sustainability principles into all aspects of human life on this planet. We also recognise the government deadline of 2030 by which Trinity has to reduce its carbon footprint by over 50%. A climate action plan is currently being developed by Trinity to meet this deadline. This Green Week, we hope to encourage students to reflect on these goals and to open a discussion on the challenges we face in the decade ahead. We hope to inspire Trinity students to rise to these challenges as future leaders and champions of sustainability. The climate emergency and our environmental issues have been overshadowed this past year by the COVID pandemic. It is time to bring our focus back to the environmental emergency we face and to commit to facing its challenges. Trinity students have achieved a lot in terms of sustainability in the last year. We have a lot to celebrate. This year, for the first time, the Green Campus Committee established 9 subcommittees focused on key action areas from waste to sustainable procurement and attracted over 30 new members. We now have over 50 active staff and student members working to make Trinity a more sustainable place. This major change to our structure has boosted engagement and made the committee a true force for change on campus. Across the university, many students have been passionately tackling environmental issues through various initiatives. They have not let this pandemic stop them in their drive to innovate and inspire change. Two students, Lara Parker and Laura Brennan, successfully launched an app called EthiCart, which creates sustainability profiles for food products and empowers consumers to make more sustainable choices when shopping. Another group of Trinity students launched a startup called FiltraCycle, a device which recycles cigarette butts into plastic, which is then used to create consumer products. A final year student, Tate Donnelly, ran for government with the Greens in 2020 and established himself as an environmental advocate on the national stage. This year has put many Trinity students on the map for their sustainable initiatives and commitment to environmentalism. I would like to say to any students attending today that, just as Greta Thunberg says, no person is too small to make a difference, no idea or initiative is either. You can bring your ideas to the Green Campus Committee or apply for funding for them through the Sustainability Fund or the Launchbox programme. I would like to bring your attention to a petition that the Students' Union have recently launched, calling on the university to create a joint office of sustainability and civic engagement with at least 10 full-time staff trained and focused on transforming Trinity into a sustainable organisation that integrates environmental education into its curriculum to prepare future generations for the challenges this planet will face. This petition also demands that the university provide a dedicated space to meet, to discuss environmental initiatives and issues, and to expand the existing environmental training resources available to staff and students. Please sign this petition, which can be found on the TCDSU Facebook page or website. I would like to finish by thanking you all for attending the Green Week launch and to thank everyone who has organised an event. We have an amazing lineup this year and we welcome you to register for and attend as many events as you can. It is now my great honour to introduce former President of Ireland and Chancellor of Trinity College Dublin, Mary McAleese. Chancellor McAleese has many achievements which are inspiring for the students of this college. These include her advocacy for the LGBTQ community, in particular during the same-sex marriage referendum. She is also a strong advocate for greater inclusion of women in the Catholic Church. During her presidencies, she was a key figure in the improvement of relations between Ireland North and South and Ireland and Great Britain. Students, let her fearless advocacy on important social issues inspire us in our environmental advocacy and activism during our college years and beyond. We would like to thank you, Chancellor McAleese, very much for supporting Trinity Green Week, and I will now hand you over to Chancellor McAleese. Thank you.
Míle maith atáine agus céad míle fáilte gach aine tá bailethe b'cunne lánseo den seachtain seo. You're so welcome to Trinity's 19th Green Week. As you can hear and see, it's about our college's young community, but also the not so young community, but that community in Ireland's oldest university, taking visible, practical responsibility for the health, the safety, the sustainability of our ancient but creaking planet. The moon landings and the Mars landings notwithstanding, this is our one and only, so far, physical home. And it's showing more and more signs of sickness. And that sickness is just so sadly, it's the result of damage that we're inflicting on it. Damage that didn't need to be done, does not need to continue. But if that damage does continue, that sickness remains unhealed, it will change all our lives and definitely not for the better. It is already changing our lives. But the good news is, if there is good news in this, it is that we have it in our power to make our planet well again. We're the only people who can make it well again. We're not placing our hopes for making our planet healthy on the finding of some new magical medicine or magical vaccine. For although thankfully the vaccines are the answer to COVID, they aren't the answer to climate change. They're not the answer to sustainability. They are, and the problems that we have with biodiversity, these are problems which are changing the face of the earth. They're dimming the light that is this earth, and they're certainly dimming the light of the future. Healing our earth is now a rallying cry. It's to everybody, every single one of us who inhabit this earth. We have a responsibility for everything we do to make sure we are healers and carers for this planet. Our inaction and our actions created this mess. So it's going to take a massive collective heft of effort to clean it up, to create something beautiful out of something that is currently very chaotic and messy, to make our planet green again, to let it breathe, and indeed to let us breathe again. It'll take action in our home, our streets, our workplaces, our industries, our communities, our countries, and our continents. And that effort is going to be in my home, your home. It's going to be at local level, national level, international level. And to generate that heft, that momentum, to get us all behind this great project, which is time limited. It's going to take education, re-education, radically fresh thinking about how we do things and see things. And it's also going to take a huge willingness to accept change and to adapt to the kind of changes that are going to be needed. That's why for the past 19 years, Trinity College, Ireland's oldest university, has led the way with the longest running Green Week in any of Ireland's higher education institutions. Proper order, I think, that Trinity would lead the way. But the week is not just about drawing attention to the crisis, but showcasing just how local and how immediate has to be our commitment to the overall global effort that we know set out in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. In order to follow through on our university's responsibility for its part in bringing those goals about and getting them over the line, Trinity, as we've heard, plans to cut its carbon emissions by over half in 2030. Those words just trip off the tongue, but to achieve that, we're going to need everybody on board, because the level of changes that will require will be quite substantial, and we've got to get behind them. And this dedicated week, it embraces the entire college community. It takes the issue of pages and pages of reports into practical action, practical education, practical evidence that we are in Trinity, that we are a concerned community, and that we take really seriously our own personal, individual, and institutional responsibility for climate action and for the future sustainability of our planet. Now, seriously is one thing, but it doesn't have to be po-faced either. That's the great thing about the Green Week, that even a virtual Green Week can be fun, it can be engaging, it can be joyful, but it can also be very fulfilling to know that you're engaged in doing something that is making such a difference. And that's evident in the buy-in from so many of our students, our staff, and our college societies that you've heard about. This week sees a litany of green-oriented events, a mobilization that we really, really hope will sustain year-round and will make our eminent city centre campus a green light that helps dispel forever the very threatening shadows that are cast by climate change. Little by little, we can shift our culture from carelessness, which got us in this mess, to care, which is going to get us out of this mess. We actually have no choice. We have to become nurturers of our planet because our very existence is at stake. A year ago, when you think of it, just a year ago, most of us had never heard the word COVID. We were just about to hear it. And it was virtually unknown to us. Today, it has radically altered just about everything that was once so familiar. The normal everyday was just stopped in its tracks. And suddenly, because disease stalked us very immediately, because death stalked us, because of the impossible burdens on healthcare systems, on frontline workers, we adapted very rapidly to new norms. We didn't like it, but we did it. I remember my grandmother always used to say, you don't have to like it, you just have to do it. And we did. And we'll keep on doing it until we're safe again. And COVID has brought home to us just how unpredictable and unstable a place our planet is and is increasingly becoming. It's also brought home to us that to conquer COVID, we've had to listen to experts. We've had to listen carefully to their advice. And then we've also had to realize that the future and the safety of ourselves and everybody around us depends on us taking our own personal action to halt the spread of the virus. So everybody who does the right thing for themselves is also doing the right thing for everybody else. But the good thing, if there's anything good about COVID, there's not a lot, but one of the things that it taught us is how adaptable we are, how quickly we can respond when we're threatened and when we have to. And where there's profound change, challenging change, intrusive change, and where there's no other pathway to safety, we are capable of making the big game changes that are called for. The experts, the climate experts, all those scientists, they tell us that despite the damage that we have inflicted on this poor old planet, it's still not too late. It's not too late to change course, to reverse the climate damage, but it is time limited. We have to get on with it. You know, we can't sit around any longer. We can't sit on our hands. We've got to do what it takes to make this planet healthy again. And there's a role for everybody to play, from the young, the not so young, from the kids, you know, who've learned to reduce, recycle and reuse, to they're now walking to school or cycling to school instead of jumping into the car, wearing an extra layer instead of turning up the heating. The consumers now who are very conscious about ethical issues to do with buying, consuming, necessity, and the type of products and where they've come from and how far they've traveled and how they're wrapped. All of these issues are now becoming issues that you think about on an everyday basis, from the new buildings, which are carbon neutral, thankfully, to Ireland's elderly doyen of universities, blessed with beautiful elderly buildings, but facing up to that courageous challenge of going green, not for a week, not just for a week, but, you know, forever. Big or small, every single effort builds up a great human bulwark of care for one another, and a bulwark of care around our planet that will allow it to become healthy again. We can make it strong again. We can make it safe again. We have to. There is no other choice. And I want to say a very big thank you to everyone who makes themselves a frontline carer for planet Earth. Green Week reminds us that these are days for deciding what we must do, not what we prefer to do, but what we have to do. And these really are, as the theme for the week says, these are the days for the big game change. So let's just do it.
Thank you, Chancellor McAleese. I agree that we all need to gear up for radical change, including Trinity as an institution. And as my father was fond of saying, like your grandmother, you'll enjoy it whether you like it or not. So COVID has shown us that we are capable of radical change and capable of adapting to radical change. And we need to apply that to the health of the planet, because as you say, we do not have much time left to work with. Okay, it is my great honour to next introduce Provost Prendergast as our next speaker. Provost Prendergast has championed sustainability at Trinity over the past number of years by setting up an advisory committee on sustainability, establishing an annual sustainability report, and overseeing the creation of our first climate action plan, among many other things. Please welcome Provost Prendergast. You're muted, Paddy.
Thank you, Michelle, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Chancellor, for your inspiring, lovely words. And this is my 10th Green Week as Provost, and my last, of course, because in July, my term of office will end. And I've been thinking about all the challenges that face us and all the initiatives I'd like to prioritise in my last few months of leading this great university. Now, as always, of course, there's much to do, from the immediately essential to the long-term and visionary. But the one issue that stands out above all others, the one challenge that is overshadowing and overwhelming, is, of course, climate and biodiversity emergency. Facing up to what is happening to the planet cannot wait. I'll quote Greta Thunberg, like others have. She said something that I think is quite succinct. I want you to act as if the house is on fire, because it is. The reason why we're calling this Green Week 2030, the time for a game change, is because the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has warned that we have 9 years left to prevent irreversible climate change. 9 years. That's less than one provostal term. And the World Wildlife Fund recently documented that since 1970, 60% of animals have been wiped out by human activity, which means that today 97% of animals on our planet are domestic or farm animals, and just 3% are in the wild. How do we get our head around these figures? Humankind cannot bear very much reality, wrote T.S. Eliot in The Four Quartets. And unfortunately, we're all living that truth. We can continue to go about our daily business as if we had 900 years to address this emergency and not 9. We could easily do that, but we better not. I was born in 1966, and 4 years earlier, Rachel Carson had published her classic Silent Spring. So we've had more than enough time to face the reality of accelerating loss of biodiversity. What is it with us as a species that we refuse to face the consequences of our behavior? We see ourselves as a species apart, endowed with the power of imagination. But when it comes to the future, we're experts at not imagining it. How much can one university do? And is it even the job of universities? Some people would answer not much and no. We answer a lot and yes. It is our job. And let me say why. Firstly, this is our responsibility because universities decide what's taught to young people. And universities determine, more or less completely, determine what's researched. This means that universities determine what ideas end up in the heads of people who form governments, corporations, and international organizations, particularly in rich countries which consume most of the resources. So, if the words crisis and emergency aren't getting through, then let's take responsibility for it. Secondly, universities are centres for research and scholarship, centres for thinking, where there's thinking and ideas, there's hope. It's scientific research that has brought us renewable energy, carbon capture, biodegradable materials, and enzymes that eat plastic. It's scholarship in the humanities that answers questions of why we act like we do, and asks what constitutes the ethical life. It's the creative arts, and in the creative arts that we find the words, the sounds, the images that give us the tools to reimagine a new future and the courage to face the realities of creating it. Universities help people to think and face reality. That's what we do. Thirdly, universities are where young people congregate and grow their ideas, and it's young people who are driving the green agenda. Here in Trinity, it's the students who have led the divestment from fossil fuels and the banning of single-use plastics on campus and have pioneered measures to combat food waste. It's students who came up with innovation solutions to sustainability challenges and do this every year in the Undergraduate Incubator Launchbox. Where young people are engaged, there is hope. It's the privilege of universities to be the platform where the energy of young people can be harnessed. We must prioritize this issue that they have identified as the great concern of their generation. The task that confronts, or should confront, all universities today is to help people face the reality of this planetary crisis and combat it. It's an enormous task, but we shouldn't shrink before its enormity. We've heard already from colleagues some of what Trinity is doing to face up to this enormous task. We're constantly building on our initiatives. This is the college's 19th Green Week, and prior to that we had a recycling committee and recycling weeks. Trinity staff and students have been banging this drum for a long, long time, and we should be proud that the banging just keeps getting louder. I won't reiterate the initiatives that my colleagues have already talked about, but let me mention two which are particularly important and I think haven't been mentioned yet. The first is E3, the new Engineering, Environment and Emerging Technologies Institute. This is being developed in two phases, and we're well advanced on our first phase, building the E3 Learning Foundry here on the main campus. That E3 Learning Foundry will educate people to find, as the mantra has it, balanced solutions for a better world. Already this year, the new undergraduate course in environmental science and engineering has been launched, and I can tell you now that it has 261 CAO applicants for just 20 places. And the new Masters on Climate Science will start in September. And just a fortnight ago, we announced the Kinsella challenge-based E3 Multidisciplinary Project Awards, and that will fund 15 PhD students in this area. Second initiative in education is that Trinity is a member of the European university called CharmEU. We're in that together with the universities of Barcelona, Montpellier, Utrecht, and ELTE in Budapest. And Trinity was central to creating CharmEU, and for CharmEU coming together, all these universities with the mission of reconciling humanity with the planet. And from this has come the new master's course, Global Challenges for Sustainability, a joint award by the 5 universities and the very first pan-European master's course under the European Universities Initiative of the European Commission. So Trinity's leadership on climate action is being felt at a European level. Through E3 and CharmEU, and through the other initiatives which Michelle and Anya have mentioned, including UniEco and Green Labs, Trinity is embedding sustainability and ecology into our research and education programs and into our day-to-day running of the college. We have to, though, continue to accelerate this approach. And I'm delighted, for instance, that one of the new Trinity electives is Toolkit for a Smart and Sustainable World, run by the Nature Plus Centre. Is this all enough? No, it isn't. And we have to do more, and we have to do it urgently. And this Green Week is about signalling urgency. We cannot signal it often enough. We cannot act soon enough. So I want to close by making 2 announcements. First, I'll be launching a new research initiative about environment and ethics and environmental humanities. I have some philanthropy to support this, and it's a priority for me. It's vital that the work of E3 and CharmEU be complemented by interdisciplinary thinking in ethics and the social sciences. As I've said, only through an integrated, multidisciplinary approach across the sciences and humanities can we address the challenge of our human behaviour that is damaging the planet. Second, it's my pleasure to announce that in response to a bottom-up set of representations from students and academics, one of whom is Nora Campbell, and I see she put some questions through already on the chat. On Earth Day, the 22nd of April, teaching across the university will focus on the climate emergency and biodiversity crisis. Every school, department, and unit will contribute their own unique take. I believe that hearing from natural scientists, engineers, historians, theologians, health scientists, political scientists, creative artists, psychologists, all of us, it will be incredibly compelling and will help get across collectively the stark reality that we are facing. And if you think that this is far-fetched, that every school and department should have a contribution, I can tell you that the Trinity Centre for Literary and Cultural Translation is currently carrying out pioneering research into eco-translation. These researchers define translation as a relationship across difference, not just across different languages, but across different ways of being. And that's such a compelling idea, that the failure of our human relationship to the planet is a failure of translation, of communication. Let me end with the wonderful lines from the poet Manley, Hopkins. He wrote these lines almost 150 years ago, but he seems to be addressing us across time. What would the world be once bereft of wet and wildness? Let them be left, oh, let them be left, wildness and wet. Long live the weeds and the wilderness yet. As we rewild our campus, let us say with Hopkins, long live the weeds and the wilderness yet. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Provost. I'm next going to introduce our Dean of Students and Trinity Sustainability Champion, Catherine McCabe. And since taking on this role less than a year ago, Catherine has provided huge support and leadership in the area of sustainability. Please welcome Catherine McCabe.
Thanks, Michelle. Hello, everyone. The Trinity vision statement says that we are a globally connected community of learning, research and scholarship, inspiring generations to meet the challenges of the future. And because of that, we seek to be globally responsible. As you've already heard from Anya, our Chancellor, and the Provost, our efforts in this regard is evident in our research and scholarship in relation to climate change and sustainability. But we need to ensure that we are responsible internally within Trinity and externally in our community, locally, nationally, and internationally. And we do this, by raising awareness through education and learning in a way that increases our knowledge of the importance of the climate and biodiversity crisis and its impact, in order to motivate all of us to take actions, and not just those who are directly involved in research. As Dean of Students, I am the sustainability champion in college, as Michelle said. But therefore, I see the extensive amount of work that our students and staff are involved in that is related to sustainability. We've heard many examples of this today, ranging from small actions. For example, those who apply to the Sustainability Fund, to much grander and ambitious projects, such as E3. All are important and essential, no matter how big or small. They all play a part. Our intent is evident in the current strategic plan, in which we have committed to aligning our activity with the UN Sustainable Development Goals and significantly increasing the extent to which our research and teaching aligns with the aim of achieving a healthy and sustainable planet. Ambitious indeed, but we will, in part, achieve this by developing and implementing a climate change action plan. And that will be implemented over the next 5 years. Work, in fact, has already started on this important objective. Trinity needs to apply resources to achieve these ambitious goals, of course, but we will also conserve resources. And we'll do that by being more efficient with our water, energy, and consumer goods, by implementing more climate and biodiversity conscious projects at the university. While we're in the process of generating a comprehensive climate action plan for the university, there are many existing initiatives that we can all participate in. Examples such as the Resident Sustainability Champions Programme, the Sustainable Procurement Guidelines, and the new Green Labs programme that was launched last week, as well as the 9 different subcommittees within the Green Campus Committee that Anya mentioned. We need your passion and enthusiasm to multiply the beneficial impacts of all of these. So please get in touch through sustainability@tcd.ie to join us. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the week. There's a lot of really fantastic events on that, I hope raise awareness and give you all an idea about how to contribute further to this really important activity. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Catherine. So thanks again to everybody for joining us for the launch of Green Week. Please do invite your friends and family to participate in any of the events throughout the week. We've got some incredible events going on. I strongly recommend that you tune in for the evening of celebration this evening from 7 to 10 for a student-led entertainment evening, which will involve music and spoken word and performance. And then also there's an environmental hustings with 3 provost candidates on Thursday evening at 7:30. Please do tune in for that and invite anybody who has a vote to tune into that, because we really need a strong conversation about how Trinity is going to radically change going forward to encapsulate the action that is needed and in order to drive change within society. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you for joining us, and I hope you get out to enjoy this lovely sunny day.